everyone. Welcome to the Sunday Guardian show by Joyeeta Basu. I'm the editor of the Delhi-based newspaper, the Sunday Guardian. Now, in today's show, let's talk about Iran and India. Now, all of you must have seen visuals of the anti-hijab protests going on in Iran. Now, women there are rejecting this symbol of anti-modernity and patriarchy. Now, isn't it ironic and even sad that at the same time a section of Indian society is vociferous in their demand to wear the hijab in educational institutions and has even gone to court saying that hijab is mandatory in their religion. Now, keeping such Indians company is Rahul Gandhi, who has got himself photographed holding the hand of a tiny girl of maybe 9 or 10 or maybe even 7 or 8, who is covered from head to foot in a hijab and a black abaya. You know the abaya, the loose black garment that is worn outside. Now, what sort of a message is Rahul Gandhi thus trying to send? And then there are some other Indians of a particular ideological variety. I don't want to go into that. Now, these Indians are call themselves intellectuals, and they are asserting with full confidence that while wearing the hijab in Iran is bad, wearing the hijab in India is good. Seriously? Now, also take note of the Indian women's rights activists who have fallen silent on the matter. Now, forget about showing any solidarity with the women of Iran. They are not speaking out at all. Now, the thing is, first let me speak of Iran here. Now, the protest videos emerging from Iran have set social media on fire. Now, we can see Iranian women are out on the streets, burning their hijab, cutting their hair. Now, all this started after the death in police custody of a 22-year-old woman called Mahsa Amini, who was arrested for not wearing the hijab properly and was possibly tortured in custody by Iran's morality police. Now, what we are witnessing in Iran is an explosion of anger against the hardline theocratic regime that rules that country. Now, the Iranian women are up against a vile regime led by a radical cleric, Ebrahim Raisi, now who is known for being part of what was known as a panel of death, which sent thousands of political prisoners to death in 1988. And of course, there are the clerics overall. Now, Iran, the Ayatollah and all others. Now, Iran's clerics are an anachronism in the modern world and have the extremely controversial morality police known as Gasht-e-Irshad or guidance patrols to implement their diktat on the ground. Now, their job is to ensure that Iranians strictly follow the Islamic dress code, now which bans the wearing of tight trousers, torn jeans, exposure of knees, wearing even colored clothes, and of course wearing the hijab is mandatory for women. Any violation of these codes can land people in jail. But as it happens with all such Jurassic customs and laws worldwide, it is always the women who have to bear the brunt of such laws that are invariably drafted and enforced primarily by men. Now, listen to what Iranian Nobel laureate Shirin Ebadi had said about the Iranian Revolution of 1979. Now, in an essay titled Islamic Law and the Revolution Against Women, Ebadi wrote, although the 1979 revolution in Iran is often called an Islamic revolution, it can actually be said to be a revolution of men against women. It led to the enactment of numerous discriminatory laws against women, which effectively took us back in time. Now, as Ebadi points out, after the revolution, one of the first things that the Revolutionary Council did, now even before the drafting of the constitution, was to legalize polygamy, by which a man could take 4 wives. Now, stoning to death for adultery was legal in Iran after the revolution. According to human rights groups, at least 150 people were executed by stoning between 1980 and 2009 in Iran. Now, most of these victims were women. Hence, gender-based discrimination, even violence, has been made into law by Iran, just like in several other countries where the respective regimes misinterpret the Sharia to suit their own interests, as in Afghanistan. No wonder the anger that you see on Iran's streets has been long simmering. Now, you see, Iranians in general want to be part of a modern, inclusive world. But the medieval regime that rules them is pushing them into darkness. Now, it is this regression and a patriarchal culture that the Iranian women of all ages are fighting against without fearing for their lives. Now, this gender revolution is now spreading across Iran, and men too have started joining the protests. Now, the regime, not knowing to handle the protests, has started resorting to violence by opening fire on the protesters, which is resulting in multiple deaths. Iran is witnessing what we can call a struggle between progress and regress, between light and darkness, and life and death. Now contrast the situation with India, where Rahul Gandhi is walking hand in hand with a tiny child wrapped in hijab and abaya. And what is he doing? He is thus endorsing a symbol that thousands of Iranian women are fighting against. Now he is doing so presumably because his Bharat Jodo Yatra is going through an area dominated by the minority community. But the question is, isn't he thus doing a disservice to the minority community in general by painting them as opposed to modernity? Also, think of the little girl. How will such a tiny little thing know anything about dressing modestly? Shouldn't she be out there playing with her friends, unencumbered of the burden of her parents and her community's beliefs and customs? Isn't she losing her childhood in this manner? Now, I'm constantly told that wearing or not wearing the hijab is a matter of choice. Now, how is wearing the hijab at that age of 8 or 9 or 10 a matter of choice? Does the girl actually have a choice? Now, if you look at it, it's actually conditioning, which is resulting in young girls agitating for their right to wear the hijab in their educational institutions. Now, wearing the hijab is not banned in India, but if anyone gives the argument that unless little girls of 10 or 11 or even older cannot go to school unless and until they cover themselves up from head to foot, now it becomes an issue of placing one's religious identity above education, which is a shame. And I'm going to say the same thing for ghungat, by the way, which some married Hindu women in rural India wear to cover their head as a mark of modesty. Both hijab and ghungat to me symbolize the submitting to patriarchy, having a very skewed notion of being virtuous women. Now, it is not a question of choice to dress the way one wishes to. The question of choice does not arise when the mind has been conditioned to believe that covering oneself from the male gaze is the appropriate thing to do for women and girls. No symbol of patriarchy can be made into a matter of women's right or religious identity. It's simply wrong, period. Now, the fundamental problem is that in India, many of us are unable to value the freedom and the rights our country has given us. In Iran, they are sacrificing their lives to get a tiny whiff of that freedom. Now, feel grateful that we are Indians, and as the citizens of the world's largest democracy, do not stay quiet. Support the women of Iran. Learn from them, for they are an inspiration to women the world over. Thank you for watching.